Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so just a really quick introduction. Thank you all for coming tonight. So tonight we have with us our guest presenter, Miss Georlenna Douglas. I really don't know that much about her, but we've been corresponding via email. She is interning at North Carolina Central University's Counseling Center, and I just learned that she will be graduating with her master's in college counseling this May. So we want to give her a big round of applause for that. And we are excited to have her tonight. She's going to share some information. We remembered some of the feedback that you guys gave last week. And so she's going to share some information with us. And Ms. Douglas, you have the floor. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yes, I am Georlenna Douglas. I am a student intern at Central, although I actually attend NC State. So there's that. And I do graduate in May. I'm super excited. So essentially, I'm here to discuss what the Counseling Center can do for students of Central. So let's get into it. Give me 1 second. There we go. So to start off, I think it's important for us to be aware. There's common mental health issues such as depression and like generalized anxiety that, I think what is happening? For the most part, we all seem to maybe feel or could identify. I don't know why that happened. So knowing the signs. So when someone is maybe feeling depressed or their anxiety levels are going up, they might feel lethargic. They might lose a sudden interest in things that they normally enjoy. They might have frequent headaches, stomach aches. So it's not all about a mental block. Like it can affect you physically. You might not be able to sleep well. There might be sudden weight loss or weight gain and other things. And then fun fact, Mental Health Awareness Month is in May. So being present, the idea of trying to practice mindfulness. So mindfulness consists of being aware of our thoughts and our feelings and being able to recognize how these thoughts and emotions affect you mentally and physically. So are you able to identify how you feel and why you're feeling this way? So can you identify your triggers? Like if you're someone who maybe experienced a type of trauma, maybe hearing certain words or smelling certain things, that might be a trigger for you where you feel a sense of discomfort, where your mood is suddenly dropped. And the same thing can happen for positive emotions. Like there might be a moment where you hear certain things and it reminds you of a positive person in your life and it elevates your mood, or a song that makes you happy. So a lot of the times when we're thinking of mindfulness, a lot of the times those type of people end up having like maybe anxiety issues. They need to practice what's called grounding techniques in order to keep themselves present, make sure that they're able to identify the things that are going on within themselves and even around them. So a small grounding technique is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. And it's being able to identify 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So generally when someone is experiencing like maybe some type of anxiety attack, they can go through this moment where their brain is going miles an hour. Like they can't like focus on something. So by doing this grounding technique, it's forcing them to focus on what's happening around them. It's forcing their brain to slow down and focus on singular things. That way they're not feeling so overwhelmed. They're able to calm themselves down. There's other grounding techniques, like if someone's experiencing like a really serious anxiety attack, like there's a thing where you bite a lemon because it's so sour, it forces you to like think about there's something sour in your mouth, which goes back to the grounding technique of the 1 thing you can taste. So being able to be aware of what's happening around you is a big part of like just, I guess, feeling centered. And I guess you can see from the photo I chose that someone practicing yoga. So that's important for people who maybe struggle with like really bad anxiety. Even if you have depression, like being able to just focus on the here and the now as opposed to what happened before could be helpful. And I guess like making strides and not feeling so overwhelmed or sad. Sad is a very like obscure word to use, but yeah. So being able to be there. So are we able to show up for ourselves and checking in? So are you someone who can identify um, how your friends are doing? Can you identify when the energy is off within yourself or your friend group? Can you be a person that when things don't feel right, you can maybe speak up on it? Like the idea of just, I noticed you're not feeling too good these days. How are you doing? Can you send those type of text messages comfortably, or asking how are you really? Like I think that's like a new thing nowadays. Like, or when so you ask someone how they're doing, you have to follow up with really, because a lot of the times people just want to say I'm good, and it's like, are you though? Are you really good? And sometimes they're not, and that's the reality. So a part of wanting to check in is like also being vulnerable, but expecting people to be vulnerable with you. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. We in a whole pandemic, and life is hard right now. That's the reality. And it's just like, if you don't give yourself the space to identify when things are going wrong with you, how are you able to do the same thing for others? And that brings to the third point of being able to create the space for yourselves and others to open up. Are you someone who your friends feel like they can turn to? Are your friends people that you feel like you can turn to? It's a two-way street. We not we're not going to try and process everything by ourselves. Like sometimes being able to have that shoulder to cry on makes a difference, and feeling heard and feeling seen, as opposed to like trying to bottle everything up or maybe minimizing our problems. Like it's not that big of a deal. And we are all going through it to some capacity. That's just the reality of what is going on in the outside world. So trying to be some type of an emotional support for our peers, it matters. It makes a difference. Like, showing someone or telling someone that you care or you're here, even if they choose not to utilize that, it still makes a difference to them because they feel appreciated or understood, rather. All right, so self-care. Like self-care is like a huge thing these days. People want to make sure they're good, and you want to make sure yourself is good. I cannot stress enough to my students that you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are not taking care of yourself, you are of no service to anyone else. That is the reality. When you think of self-care, you have to think of things that you enjoy doing, what makes you happy, what makes you feel fulfilled. If you're someone who's an extrovert, being around other people, that's comforting to you. Whereas someone who's an introvert, they need time alone to recharge. They need um those days off to just like get themselves together. And then taking time for yourself, I wrote down being able to say no. Like that is such a big thing. We get so caught up in wanting to help other people and do what's best for others that we kind of forget about what's best for us. And we end up doing things that we don't really want to do and kind of feel stuck. And we don't want that. So being able to just like set boundaries, say no, this isn't for me, or maybe later, that would make a difference in just preserving your self energy. You don't have to be on for everyone all the time. Okay. So for Central's Counseling Center, it is free mental health counseling for enrolled Central students. There are 5 licensed clinicians on staff, and then there's 1 student intern, which is me. It is located on the 2nd floor of the Student Health Building. And at this moment, counseling sessions are currently done virtually. So Let me get to the next one. So to make an appointment, you would end up calling that number, which is 919-530-7646. And you would speak with Miss Grace Wilson. She's the administrative associate for the counseling center. And she will set up an appointment for you. And that's literally the process. We do have walk-in appointments. So essentially when someone is coming in for a walk-in, it's like emergency basis. Like it's very serious issues that need to be handled immediately. So generally, which brings me to the third bullet, is that when we set up an appointment, you have to do an intake. And when we do an intake, we're getting a general idea of what you need and what you're looking to get out of your counseling experience. And we can't further the counseling experience unless the intake is done first, because we have no clue what you want. That last bullet is a mental health screening that Central actually provides. I'll link it in the chat afterwards, but essentially, like, Central has a screening available that you can go through all types of potential issues. So maybe you're worried if you have depression, or worried if you have anxiety. Maybe there's a worry of if you are abusing substances. Central has mental health screenings that would be able to gauge if you are in some type of harm to yourself, and what the next steps are to being able to take care of yourself in your situation, or just to give you an idea of, where you're at mentally. Like, it may not be anything serious at all. I guess it was worth mentioning earlier that anxiety is actually normal. It's a part of life. It's kind of unavoidable. So essentially, like, this screening will just give you some type of gauge of like where you're at mentally, and it's not going to force you to do anything. It'd be up to you if you wanted to go ahead and pursue counseling further. So we also offer collegiate recovery, the Collegiate Recovery community, aka the CRC. Essentially, it's drug and alcohol support. If it's someone who may be using drugs or alcohol to cope with stress, being a college student is not easy, and these college students during a pandemic, that makes it even more difficult. So we offer that type of support. We have drop-ins on Monday and Thursday, Monday at 10 a.m. to 11, and then Thursday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then we also have frequent events like our Let's Talk events, where we get on live, like Instagram, Facebook, WebEx, and we have discussions, open discussions with students of Central about various topics surrounding addiction. So we just had a gamer's addiction that passed. Previously, we had a lover's addiction or sex addiction. And the next month, because it's 420, we'll be doing a marijuana addiction. So we try and keep everything really relevant. And it was requested of me to go over group work. I didn't get any details, so if there's questions at the end, I'm glad to answer them. But teamwork makes the dream work. And group work is not fun for a lot of people, I know, but it's something we gotta do. So group work benefits, it's gonna help you with problem solving, practice active listening. It is teamwork, and you'll be improving, or at least it'll help your communication skills. So essentially, when we're in our group work roles, where we have to establish a role, so there's, whether you want to admit to it or not, there's a bit of a hierarchy of like, there's the leader, and then there's the people that are following what that leader is saying, whether you want to take that role or not. Then there's the self-advocacy part. If there's things in the group, which goes back to the communication, if there's things in the group that you don't necessarily like or enjoy, are you willing to speak up for yourself and say what you think might be better? And then lastly is the collaboration of ideas. And again, this goes back to the communication and the teamwork. You want to be able to speak effectively to others about the things that you would like to have implemented within the group work process. So it's the idea of being respectful of one another, talking clearly, having clear communication, whether that's like verbally or through email or through text, however you choose to do your group work, I guess, interactions. Um, that was actually my last slide. I feel like I went through this super fast, and I'm sorry if I did, but I was leaving the floor open for discussion afterwards.
Oh no, no apologies needed. You did wonderful. It was quick, but it was definitely efficient. It was efficient. So I do have some questions because um I have had trouble with group work before as well, and I did note that you had some benefits and some social cues. What are some things that people can do if they're not feeling comfortable having those conversations? Because I know we talked about that in a different sense of talking about emotions and feelings and things of that nature. But what do you do in group settings when you're like, I really want to tell this person I don't like that they left me with the majority of the work, or I don't like, et cetera, et cetera. How do you go about communicating that?
So this goes back to the advocacy part. You got to be able to speak up for yourself, and I know that's hard, and you might not want to step on any toes, but that's the reality. If you're plain and simple, your grade is on the line, right? Everyone's grade is on the line when it's a group project, and it's like if you feel that what you have to say is going to change or be most effective to the group process, then say it. And I mean, I think it's the idea that like the only thing you can really be met with is a no, but being that it's a group dynamic, it might be more respectful to suggest a vote or um further collaborate on ideas like, well, I think this. Has anybody else come up with anything that might be maybe different from what was initially presented? You got to be able, or you got to be comfortable with wanting to speak up for yourself, as well as being open and receptive to having that dialogue with someone about, what what would be best for the group.
I have a question as well.
Okay.
So on one of the slides you had self-care isn't selfish. And I think that's something that a lot of us deal with, trying not to, like, sometimes taking care of yourself can make you feel like it's a selfish act. So how do you train yourself to know, okay, it's not selfish, but it's needed? Like, because I know it's easier said, I say it to people all the time, but when it comes down to myself, sometimes I'm like the last person to get what's needed. So how do you actually practice that? Or what ways do you practice it instead of just saying it?
I am like the worst person to give examples about trying to practice because I hit burnout real quick. And that's like more to my point that when we neglect to take care of ourselves, you can potentially hit burnout like that. Like it happens in an instant. Like one day you feel like you're on top of the world, you can handle anything, and then the next you can't even get out of bed because it's so overwhelming. Um and when we think of self-care, it doesn't have to be on this like grand scale where it's like I gotta put all my stuff aside and go on vacation. Self-care could be deciding to take an extra long shower. Self-care could be, well, I'm going to drink a glass of wine tonight to like calm my nerves and chill out. Or self-care could be, well, I'm going to spend extra 10-20 minutes in bed before I get up and go do anything. Like self-care doesn't have to be this large gesture of you having to spend money or you neglecting your responsibilities. Like self-care can be something in a daily task that, just shows you a little bit more attention than maybe on a other day. Like I'm going to spend the day doing a face mask, and then you spend the rest of the day doing everything else you had to do, but you gave yourself that like good hour of just relaxation. So while self-care is And I think that is the issue with self-care. Like a lot of people just seem to think that it's this big gesture of, I have to throw all my responsibilities aside and then I'll pick them up when I feel like it. Like that's not what self-care is about. Like it can be on that scale if you want it to be, but it can be very basic and daily, intentional daily routines that you implement to just make sure you're in a better place.
And I like that you said that about the misconceptions of self-care. So I know for me, for one of my colleagues, they have a lot of meetings, Zoom meetings, a lot of homework and stuff throughout the week. And so what they do is on Friday, no appointments. You cannot get an appointment
Yeah.
with them. You cannot appointment with them. They are not taking any phone calls. And so because that person is having like, I believe somewhere around 20 meetings a week. So they're doing clinician work, they're working with students, and they have all these appointments throughout the week. And when they get to Friday, they're like, I have to decompress from talking to so many people each and every day. And so that has inspired me in my own way to take one day out of the week. And I just say, okay, this is the day that you don't have to worry about taking phone calls. You don't have to worry about doing assignments. But that also means that I have to make other adjustments. So my point is self-care is intentional, but it's also based on what you need, what you're capable of doing, what feels comfortable to you. Everyone can take a full day off from doing work or doing assignments. For example, being a parent, you can't say, okay, baby,
Very
today
true.
you're taking yourself.
Very true.
You can't do that. So it may be, I know I've heard in other instances, decompressing or like disconnecting from your phone before bed. So instead of running your mind with everything else that's going on the internet, you take time just to decompress yourself from the whole entire day that you had and get yourself in a good position to go to sleep, get some rest, wake up, do it again. So that is something very interesting. And also what I do is I will take those long baths,
Yeah.
and I will rise after, and I will put on silk robes, silk bed sheets, whatever I gotta do to get myself in a better mood, because I have been in those positions where I've worked for so many days and it's like, okay, since I didn't do my hair for 2 weeks, my self-care today is fixing my head because it's so whatever works for you, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But I like that you mentioned that.
Exactly. Like I know for myself, I don't check emails past like 5:30, 6 o'clock. Like that's just not gonna happen. It's nothing I feel that important because technically everything is closed at that point. So you can catch me tomorrow. I mean it's hard when you're in a clinician role because there are emergencies. I've definitely randomly decided to check my emails, and I had an email from someone at like 2:30 in the morning. But it's the idea of like, am I going to respond right now? Are they in like any immediate danger? So when you're in certain roles, it's harder to just kind of leave work to the side. But I totally feel that. I wish I had a day out of the week where I didn't have to do anything. Like, I mean, I leave that to my weekends, but you know, a weekday would be nice as well. So I feel that.
Yeah. And I was going to say, as far as different professions, glad that you mentioned that as well, because I actually attended a seminar this past week where someone that works with Child Protective Services was saying that their part of their self-care as well, part of protecting themselves from burnout is not answering emails after a certain time. And they do is to make sure that that time is protected and that space is protected. They let their clients know. So it's like, hey, you're not unaware of what's going on. I'm letting you know just so you know that part of me taking care of myself and protecting myself, I'm not responsive to emails after 5:30, but if you need to reach me, I will definitely get back with you the next following business day. So those type of conversations are part of self-care in itself, when you have to, in general, like I said, protect your self-care by sometimes letting other people be aware of, hey, this is not the day where you can call me, or this is a time period that I'll be unavailable. If you have to reach me, I'll get back with you whenever. And that brings me to my next question. More about the counseling center, because I've heard, and I want to make sure what I've heard is true about all the other virtual types of counseling sessions that are available to students. Do you guys have group sessions? What has changed about the counseling center since everything has gone virtual, or what other virtual events and spaces do you guys have for students?
So essentially, that's the only big change. Everything is now virtual. We don't give anyone the opportunity to be face-to-face. So all of the individual counseling sessions are virtual. We do have groups, which the turnout isn't as great. I think we're starting to see that, like, just maybe because of the terms of like where we're in right now, that people just prefer to be face to face. So there's not a great turnout for virtual groups, but that is available. I'm trying to think. We do have like I said, the CRC has. We have events like maybe 2 to 3 times a month, just trying to spread awareness about addictions that does plague college students while they're away at school. It's been found that a lot of students, they turn to alcohol and drugs because they're looking to have a good time, or at least that's how they try to classify it, that they're just having fun, they're relaxing, and then it turns into something, maybe not necessarily an addiction, but it turns into kind of like harmful behaviors. Yeah, that's essentially what the counseling center offers right now. We're working on an in-person event, but like I can't give too many details about that because nothing's like really finalized, but it's an adjustment. And like for the most part, it seems like students, at least the students for individual counseling is responsive to it. So the counseling center has like new people calling in pretty frequently. It's free counseling. Like, why not take the opportunity to get some type of help,
With 5 counselors, how often, or what's like the turnaround time for a student to get an appointment? Because that's a lot of, we have how many students at Central? It's a pretty, and you guys serve the entire school, right?
Right. So we do serve the entire school, but I guess it's worth saying the law school has they have their own counseling center. But in terms of like the rest of the Central population, there are 5 counselors, and then there seems to be like a rotation of student interns. So it seems like they always have like just one. With that being said, the turnaround is you would call in, and depending on who has an intake slot available. So say if you called in on Friday, my intake slot is available for Mondays, or you would be put in for my intake slot for Monday. So it's very dependent on who has availability. An issue, so to say, that a lot of people are finding is that it's like a 5 to 7 day turnaround. So you might call on Friday, but not have like an official intake until the following week. And for some people, it's just like if they feel like their problem is a little bit more serious or dire, then they're waiting almost a whole week to talk to someone, and it's not even an official session. So we're still trying to figure out ways to make it a little bit more efficient, but it is like a 5 to 7 day turnaround roughly.
Let me also ask about the intake process, because I know for students who have not gone to the counseling center or have not been to any counselor therapist at all, may not really know what that process is like, how long it's taken. I know you were speaking to students who may have a sense of urgency with their emotional needs and needing counseling support, and how their the turnaround may be just for the intake process, not actually therapeutic counseling support. So could you speak more to what the intake session is like? How long does it take? Just to get people familiarized with that if they haven't been to counseling before.
So the intake process is, let me backtrack before I get into intake. There are, like we do have walk-ins. So if it's like a true emergency, they can place you with someone immediately. But we also have to gauge the severity of the situation. But more to the intake, that's a 45-minute process. Actually, all of the sessions are 45 minutes to an hour. But the intake, we are gathering general information. So I want to know who you are. Have you ever had counseling before? What is there a history of this problem? So I'm getting an idea of like how your upbringing was. And then essentially we're going to go over treatment goals. What are you looking to gain from coming to counseling? And for some people, and the reason why the intakes take so long is because we have to flesh out a lot of things. Sometimes people can come in and say like, well, I want to be a better person. What does a better person look like? How could you be a better person? And what steps could you make to be a better person? That way, like we break down all your goals to make sure they're measurable, they're actually something you can attain, because being a better person is so vague, and you'd be surprised how often I hear that. So we give people the normal time, which is 45 minutes to an hour, to get to know them, get an idea of what they need and how we can help them. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. Do you ladies have any other questions?
So just to verify, clarify, the intake form, is that like a form they fill out, or is that something that you verbally speak with them about?
So
Or
the
is it-
intake is like having an interview.
Okay, okay.
It's paperwork that is required before starting counseling. It's like 4 forms, and it's your medical history, not anything like super detailed, but it's just for us to essentially get like clearance, like you giving us permission to have access to certain things, like we have permission to talk to you, things like that. Like you are verifying that it's okay, that you know that you're coming here, no one's doing this for you. And then with the intake, like I said, it's like an interview. I would spend 45 minutes asking someone questions. Like I literally read off of a paper and just ask questions about what they're going through, their family history, what they're looking to gain, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And if you wouldn't mind, could you share in the chat again the screening tool that you were talking about earlier, as well as I have the counseling center's number. I will share that in the chat below. Thank you. And information that you wanted to share, please do so via chat. I'll be dropping Central's counseling center and our resources. But thank you for, like I said, presenting and taking the time to speak with us. Let me go ahead and get on the resources. Zaphenia and Kyaisha, I'll let you guys take over while I drop the resources in the chat.
Okay.
Kyaisha, did you try to say something? Okay, so if we don't have any other questions,
So again, Miss Douglas, thank I might be having awful internet.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you. It's okay, Kyaisha. Zaphenia can. I know there's supposed to be like a storm or tornado in the area because I keep getting weather alerts. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's something because my internet has been horrible all day as well. But we don't really have anything else this evening. I know there is another event going on that a lot of the BSW students are trying to attend tonight. So if no one else have any questions, what we'll do is the since we recorded the session from tonight, we'll forward it to the participants that we normally have. But we do want to thank you for taking the time out and not only attending tonight, but also preparation, because we know that takes a lot as well. So we thank you for the time that you spent with us, the information that you shared with us tonight. And if you do have any resources that you'd like for us to know about, or anything that we can share with other students about the services for the Counseling Center, always feel free to, you can drop that in the chat before you go, or you can email us at any time. And we thank you for being here tonight. And I think that's it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
You all have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Catherine. Do you have the link for the session